Alright, so I got a few requests to take a look at this article posted yesterday on VG247 about the idea that Microsoft should sell the Xbox business in order to save it. And we're going to talk about all that right now. What is going on, guys? Randall Thor 19, the man with the million, back again with another video. One more day to Gamescom to get a look at that Xbox One X pre-order info, all that stuff. Can't wait. Probably be doing a live show afterwards. Hopefully it's good. I want good stuff to talk about. I don't necessarily like being negative about anything, really, but I will if it needs to be. But yeah, so I got sent this article by a bunch of people that wanted my take on this idea that Microsoft should sell the Xbox business in order to save it. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to take a look at what Matt Martin has to say about why Xbox or Microsoft should sell the business. So let's go. The Xbox One is a new console without a launch game. With Crackdown 3 pushed out of this year's release schedule, the Xbox holiday lineup for 2017 ends with just one mistimed blockbuster, not so much as a bang as an asthmatic wheeze. Well, he's not necessarily wrong there. I've said previously that this is probably the worst year exclusive retail-wise for Microsoft since they originally began. There's no mincing words here. This was a terrible year for software out of Redmond. What do we have? We had Halo Wars 2, which is a fine game, an RTS game, but a very fine game. We had Voodoo Vince, but that's not even really Microsoft. We had Phantom Dust, which was a free-to-play remaster of the OG game. We also have Forza Motorsport 7, the stalwart. You know what's going to be a quality game, even though I don't really care about motorsport. And then you also have Super Lucky's Tale. So, yeah, terrible year. No getting away around that. So, okay, so far, so good. This year, Microsoft launches a brand new console, the Xbox One X, in November. With Forza 7 out a month earlier, the Xbox One X launches with no supporting blockbuster games. A new console with no new games. Well, okay. Now, the thing here is, I've seen this thrown around on Twitter and other places, that there's no real reason to buy an X, that it has no games on it to warrant a purchase, and things like that. I think it's pretty obviously clear from what Microsoft has been doing lately is that they are heavily relying on third-party games. So that line there, a new console with no new games, is inherently false. Now, if it said a new console with no new exclusives, okay, you have a point there because that would be true. But it doesn't say that. It says a new console with no new games. There are plenty of awesome-looking, great third-party games that are coming out this holiday. From Shadow of War, to Assassin's Creed, to Wolfenstein, to Call of Duty, to Star Wars Battlefront, to Need for Speed. The list goes on and on. Some of those games will be in 4K, whether it's native 4K or checkerboarded 4K. Some of them will run at 60, some of them run at 30. There are plenty of games to play at the end of the year. And even if you go back and take a look at Sony didn't launch a first-party game with the PS4 Pro. They just made sure that the third-party games and some of their first-party games had patches to be able to play that with the system, just as Microsoft is doing. All those new games that I just mentioned are going to be enhanced in some way for the X, and Microsoft's other first-party games, Gears of War 4, Halo 5, etc., will all be enhanced with features for the X. So I kind of disagree with that little statement there. I kind of really do. And nobody really gave the Pro that much, crap, I guess, for launching without any games, any first-party games last year, because Sony doesn't necessarily want to release, and I'm of this opinion that Microsoft should follow suit. I don't think it's in Sony or Microsoft's best interest to launch exclusive games during the holidays. I just don't. I think they're better served stringing out their releases from January to September and letting the third parties fight over the scraps at the end of the year. Because you're going to benefit anyways because you're getting 30% on every one of those sales, whether digital or retail, So Sony doesn't release their games during the holiday, they string it out the rest of the year. Microsoft should follow suit, in my opinion. So let's see what he says here. He says, it might seem easy to counter that the PlayStation 4 lineup isn't bursting with first-party exclusives. Sony had blah, 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 blah. I mean, just reading through this, yes, nobody's going to say Sony didn't have a great year. They obviously did have a fantastic year, even if they're only releasing Knack 2 and Gran Turismo 7. It's basically almost the same exact lineup as Xbox with Forza Motorsport and Super Lucky's Tale. The thing is, at least there was exclusives on Sony's end, whether they were first-party games or third-party games throughout the rest of the year. Horizon Zero Dawn, Lost Legacy, the Uncharted game, Neo, Nier Automata, Persona 5, and you can keep on naming them off. So when people look back on 2017 for PlayStation, it's a success. Look at all those games. When people look back on 2017 at Xbox, software-wise, they're going to be like, that was a failure, and they're 100% right. Microsoft didn't bring it games-wise. All right. And then they talk about, in contrast, Xbox on Halo's a game nobody cared about. That's a little kind of harsh. If only Microsoft had in shit-can Scalebound, a game that was already in development. I mean, who knows the real story about Scalebound? I was told last year that the game was, earlier this year, that the game was still 2 years away. So the game wasn't going to be scheduled for 2019, until 2019. So was Microsoft right in canceling that game? I don't know. That's up to them. I mean, we'll never find out the truth about what really happened with Scalebound, but I hear it was, there was a lot of bad things happening. Fable Legends, a game that was playable in beta. I played Fable Legends, and it is disappointing that Microsoft shut down that studio and canceled that game. The Phantom Dust fiasco, blah, 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 Microsoft closing studios. Yeah, you can't damage control or, closing studios. Microsoft needs more first-party studios than ever to get out those first-party games. If you don't make games, you can't sell games. Microsoft has put itself in a ridiculous position of having the hardware ready and nothing to showcase these astounding new tech specs. What? Like, once again, we're not this. Are you just talking games in general? Because as I mentioned before, it's about the third party. And look, I don't necessarily agree with that, so don't take that as my opinion. I'm just saying everything that we've seen about the X and how Microsoft is approaching it, the idea that every game will play better on the X, is most like that is their pitch. Their pitch is that those third-party games that people love to play are going to play the best on their system. So this line here is, if you don't make games, you can't sell games. Well, Valve doesn't make games anymore, but they make a ridiculous amount of money, and the way they make a ridiculous amount of money is because they have a dominant storefront, and they take 30% off the top of every single sale. Same thing that Microsoft does. Same thing that Sony does. Same thing that Nintendo does. Microsoft doesn't have to necessarily make first-party games to make money. They're going to make money regardless because they sell people's games to their customers. So that's kind of false right there. And like I said before, the whole third-party stuff, like, yeah, it has astounding new tech specs, and you're going to have Wolfenstein running in dynamic 4K and HDR, and Evil Within 2, and all those other games I mentioned that will take advantage of those specs. Now, the first party would be able to take more advantage of those specs, but still, it's there. What else does he go on to say? I mean, I already kind of don't like this article already. He didn't even gotten to the reason why they sell it off yet. I wonder what his reasoning is. It's hoping people buy the Xbox One X on a promise that something will come out for next year. Even then, Crackdown 3 isn't going to be the game to sell a new console. Microsoft would... Hold on 1 second here. Wait, what? It's hoping people buy the Xbox One X on a promise that something will come out for next year. Even then, Crackdown... So this whole article came out yesterday, a couple days after Crackdown 3 was delayed. So this is a basic response article to Crackdown 3 getting delayed. So Crackdown 3 prompted this article about, since its delay, Microsoft needs to sell the Division off. And yet the author himself says right here, Crackdown 3 isn't even going to be a game to sell a new console. So the author admits the game isn't that important in the first place, but because of its delay, was prompted to make an article saying that Microsoft needs to sell off the Division because of Crackdown 3, which isn't that important, which the author admitted to. What? And the promise of the X, people, look, how many times do I have to say this? Microsoft is hoping people buy the X on the promise of third-party stuff, not necessarily the first-party stuff. I think that's clear. And maybe the writer of this article doesn't understand that, but I think it's pretty apparent to anybody out there. Okay, so what are you going to say? Finally, we're getting into this. So let's call it. Microsoft doesn't care about the Xbox business. It's been slowly ramping it down for years. Phil Spencer's... Wait, what? It's been slowly ramping it... Look, I know Microsoft's first-party offerings have been slowly ramping down over the years. I mean, that's just a fact. But to say Microsoft doesn't care about the Xbox business is wrong. Like, we're not seeing a ramping down, considering they're just releasing this year a $500 system that they put millions of R&D in since 2014. Releasing that new system, and you think that is a sign that Microsoft doesn't care about the Xbox business, and they've been slowly ramping it down for years, even though they just invested millions of dollars in R&D to make a mid-tier gen upgrade? If that was the case, they wouldn't even bother doing it. If they've been ramping it down for years, what would be the point? Oh, man. I know, now I understand why people sent me this article, because it's just ridiculous. Phil Spencer's doing a grand job of being that enthusiastic X on the front line, but his words are ringing hollow. It was only March when he said first-party games are critical. I remember that. I actually made a video about that. I actually remember that. And you're right. The Xbox, he did say that the first-party games were critical for launch of the Xbox One X. I totally remember that. Or the Xbox Scorpio at the time. And that was back in March, and he has to own that. He said that. They don't have anything available at launch that are first-party wise. Now, of course, if you take a look at everything, he said that in March. So, at that point, Sea of Thieves was probably still scheduled to come out this year. State of Decay 2 was probably still scheduled to come out this year. Crackdown 3 was still scheduled to come out this year. There were supposed to be more games coming out this year, and, you know, that were first party, that were going to be critical, but all those games eventually got pushed. So yeah, Phil's got to eat that. Obviously, I mean, I guess one could say he was talking about Gears or Halo or Forza Horizon 3 or the other first party games that are getting enhanced for the X, but something tells me that's not the case, even though I know you could make that argument. I'm not going to make that argument because I don't think that's what he meant. Okay, so he says the new CEO investors wanted Microsoft CEO to sell it off. Look, man, the investors have wanted Microsoft to sell off the division since they started the division, man. Like, none of the investors at Microsoft ever wanted Microsoft to get into the video game business. They've wanted them out like day one. Although Satya does see, it is important. So the fact that the CEOs come out repeatedly and backed up Xbox and the division should say enough about the idea of, oh, they're ramping it down. But the thing is, it's not a ramping down. I just feel that they don't have enough budget, that Phil's hands are tied, that the division's hands are tied. Because Xbox isn't as important to Microsoft as Sony or as PlayStation is to Sony. That's just the truth. I think they're just doing what they can with the budget that they have. And that's what you're seeing. That's why you see less games. That's why you see closures of studios that aren't producing and things like that. And the only games that they do make are small kind of indie games that are guaranteed return on, or the big AAA games that are guaranteed success, right? I mean, I did the Gears video about having it 6.4 million players, a lot higher than anybody would guess. I mean, I'm assuming Halo 5 is even beyond Gears 4. Forza Horizon 3 was such a surprise. I mean, so to me, this whole thing is about them not having the money or the budget to do what they want. And there's this kind of thought process on the internet that if you're not first, you're last, right? That because Microsoft isn't beating Sony down, that they should just pack it up and go home. Oh, you're not winning, Xbox. You're not beating PlayStation. You might as well just sell a division off because you're not doing good. Get out of here. And it's like, yo, I understand that from a console war perspective. Like, the fans of Xbox want Xbox to be number one so they can go brag among their constituents and their friends and be like, yeah, we beat up those Sony ponies. Xbox is the best box, right? I get that. I get when people like to brag about them being in the group and their group is the best. It's groupthink. I get it. And it bothers a lot of those people that they can't do that they can't go out there to those Sony guys, to the fans of PlayStation, and say, we're better than you. The product that I own is better than the product that you own. Because that's basically what it comes down to, right? These people see that Xbox is losing, and it very well could be losing to Nintendo eventually, and because it's losing, it's not worth it, that they should just completely sell it off. Even though it's making money, it's profitable, right? I mean, Coke sells way more, soda and products than Pepsi does. But you don't see everybody saying, oh, Pepsi, get out of the soda business, bro. You're not number one. Ramp it down. Ramp that shit down. Sell that off. No, of course not. Because there's more than enough room for different competitors in the business. There's room for Coke. There's room for Pepsi. There's room for RC Cola. There's room for this. There's room for that. You don't see Burger King closing up shop because it doesn't sell more than McDonald's, right? I wonder if there's McDonald's and Burger King fanboys that are fighting the burger wars on Twitter and elsewhere, or Wendy's and stuff, right? Is anybody out there saying, Wendy's, you need to shut down because you're not number one? No, of course not. Because there's room for competition out there. There's room for all these different corporations to fight for your money and things like that. And even with all that I just said, I understand why people think Microsoft isn't doing well. And it's because of the silence. We never get updates on how many Xbox Ones they've sold or how well their software does. People have been going around saying Xbox One is at 36 million, 30 million, 32 million, 34 million, 28 million, 26 million. And the reason people guess is because people don't know. Because Sony is out there saying, we have 64 million. Sony's out there saying Horizon Zero Dawn's at 7 million or whatever it's at. Uncharted does this. Sony is putting out there that they're doing well. And even Nintendo's gotten into the act. So everybody sees two companies in the video game industry saying how much they've sold for their systems and their software, and they see the third one not making a peep. So they assume Microsoft's silence is an admission of not doing good. But I don't think that's necessarily the case. So let's go on and read why he thinks Amazon should buy the Xbox business. Amazon is already well invested in the entertainment production, distribution, and sales business with studios, pumping out movies and TV shows. Imagine the team that saw the potential in American Gods, Preacher, Tom Clancy, Jack Ryan, and The Tick digging around the games community for blockbuster ideas and prototypes. Or those commissions challenging movies like The Neon Demon, Manchester by the Sea. I mean, so he's basically saying because those studios or because Amazon saw something in these TV shows and movies that they might see something or they could do something for gaming, even though I don't think we've really seen anything from them games-wise yet. We don't know if their game studios or the ideas they have for it is actually going to be any good. And I find it funny that you say, look at these TV shows and movies, when that was the one thing people were kind of killing Xbox for in the beginning, TVs and movies and stuff like that. And then he goes on here to talk about Twitch. Well, I mean, Microsoft bought Mixer, so Amazon doesn't need Mixer. I guess that would come with the purchase. I would assume Amazon would just fold Mixer into the platform and use their low latency tech for it, but whatever. I don't know. That's the article. He says Amazon should buy it. I think he makes a lot of wrong assumptions here. The idea that Xbox has no games, a new console with no new games. Like, look, if you wanted to make the argument about exclusives, and they need more, which they do. That's one thing. But to say it doesn't have any new games when clearly the Scorpio, the X, is built on the idea that the third-party games would play the best, I think that kind of nullifies that argument right there completely. And look, Microsoft is going to pay the price for not having their first-party games on offer or in order. Like, don't fool yourself on that one. They will pay the price, and the price may be people leaving to go to PlayStation 4, people leaving to go to the Switch, or less people just buying Xboxes in general. So they will pay the price if there's a price to be paid for not putting out exclusive games like their competition. But from the way I'm looking at it, from the way Microsoft has talked about the X and all that stuff, the new games that are launching with the console are the third-party games. So to write an article based on the idea that Crackdown 3 was delayed, because this is obviously a reaction to Crackdown 3 being delayed, that they should sell off Division because Crackdown 3 was delayed, and because Crackdown had to be moved, Microsoft has no games to offer its consumers, therefore they should sell off the Division, even though in this same article, the author says that Crackdown 3 isn't even a game that would sell a new console. So he wrote an article basically saying that they need to sell because Crackdown 3 is not coming out this year, but Crackdown 3 isn't good enough to sell a new console. I mean, you get what my point is here. It's just, obviously, more than likely, it's just an article written for clicks, and I'm sure the guy got exactly what he wanted because it was passed around. But I did this video because I had a bunch of my subscribers request. They wanted my take on it, and I know this video turned out to be longer because I wanted to kind of go point by point with the whole article. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please hit that like button. Really helps the channel out. Subscribe if you're new to the channel or if you haven't already. Share it out on Twitter so everybody can check out the video. I'd really appreciate that. Thank you guys so much for watching. Really means a lot. Hope everybody has a good rest of the Saturday. I'm gonna probably start playing some Agents of Mayhem. I'll have a review up sometime next week for that. And I'll see everybody in the next video. Later, guys.